Good afternoon, everyone. My Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Dr. Elvin Peter. I am first year PG Register working in the Department of Medicine Unit 4. I'll be presenting on behalf of Medicine Unit 4. My title of my presentation is The Perfect Mimicker. I'm a consultant in charge of Dr. Don Kurivela. So presenting Mr. X, who is a 58-year-old electrician from Andhra Pradesh, who presented with complaints of left ankle pain, swelling, and inability to move 3 weeks back. Right knee pain, swelling, and inability to move for 2 weeks duration. High-grade fever with chills for 10 days duration, and yellowish discoloration of the eyes for 10 days duration. He did not have any abdominal pain, any vomiting, abdominal distension, or any jaundice. There was abdominal distension. There was no history of any loss of weight or loss of appetite. No history of any cough with expectation or hemoptysis. His comorbidities were he was a known diabetic for 20 years on medications. He was a known case of ischemic heart disease on medications for 2 year duration. He was not a known alcohol consumer. There was no history of any trauma to the joint or any history of intra-articular injections. Examination wise, he was an emaciated middle-aged man with sarcopenia. He was conscious oriented and was in distress due to the pain. His vital signs were heart rate was 110 per minute. Blood pressure was 130 by 80 millimeters of mercury. His respiratory rate was 20 per minute, and he was febrile with a temperature of 101 degrees Fahrenheit. His general examination, he had pallor, he had icterus, and he had bilateral pitting pedal edema up to the middle third of the knee. Cystic examination, his respiratory system had minimal bilateral basal crepitation. Other systems were within the normal limits. Musculoskeletal examination, he in the left ankle joint, he had swelling, but there was no tenderness, no warmth or restriction in movements. Right knee joint, he had swelling, warmth, tenderness, and the range of movements were restricted and painful. The skin over the right knee joint was reddish with scales. So our clinical case summary, we had a 58-year-old man who was a chronic diabetic with a history of ischemic heart disease with fever and polyarticular pain and swelling for the past 3 weeks on examination having features of infective arthritis. So our main differentials were one was a complicated Staphylococcus aureus infection with a polyarticle infective arthritis or a streptococcal infection or other gram-negative bacteria causing an infective arthritis. Our second differential was a disseminated melioidosis with a polyarticular infective arthritis. The third differential was an infective endocarditis presenting as a septic arthritis as a initial presentation. The fourth, lower down in the list, was a disseminated tuberculosis with multiple joint involvement. So going on to our investigation, he had an anemia which is an SP of 6.9, which is a microcytic hyperchromic anemia with a low reticulocyte response, low iron, normal transferrin saturation, and a normal LDH. He also had evidence of blood in the stool samples. His total counts were 11,900 with a 90% polymorphs. So platelets were within the normal range. His liver function test showed a direct hyperbilirubinemia with a minimally elevated alkaline phosphatase. His coagulation parameters were also rearranged with an INR of 1.21. He had an HbA1c of 6.4 and his CRP was elevated 201. His ultrasound examination of the knee joint showed joint effusion, of which we sent an aspirate, which showed a WBC of 6,000, polymorphs of 90%, and lymphocytes of 10%, which did not actually fulfill the criteria for a septic arthritis. However, culture from the synovial fluid grew a gram-negative bacilli species, probable Burkholderia pseudomallei. And his blood cultures also grew non-fermented gram-negative bacteria, probable Burkholderia pseudomallei. We did an ultrasound abdomen also, as he had features of direct hyperbilirubinemia, whereas it showed a mild hepatosplenomegaly with no focal lesions or any features of cholecystitis or pancreatitis. So our final diagnosis was a disseminated melioidosis with polyarticular septic arthritis with the probable sepsis-induced cholestasis, type 2 diabetes mellitus, iron deficiency anemia with features of some anemia of chronic disease, then ischemic heart disease with mild LV systolic dysfunction. So I would like to go into two studies. One is the Darwin prospective study, which is a huge study which is run on melioidosis, which was done from 1989 to 2009, where they followed up 540 cases of melioidosis, out of which they found out that the common presentation was pneumonia and 51%, followed by genitourinary infection 14%, skin infection 13%, with no evidence focus in 11%. In that study, septic arthritis and osteomyelitis were 4% of the cases. And mortality in the initial 5 years were 30%, which reduced to 9% in the last 5 years. And the presence of at least one risk factor or an age more than 50 years were considered the risk factors for mortality. The major risk factor that they found out was the diabetes, which considered almost 39%, followed by hazardous alcohol use, chronic lung disease, chronic renal disease, other malignancy, and immunosuppressive states. So this is another study which is run in CMC, in which was a retrospective study done from 2000, where they found out cases from 2008 to 2014. With 114 patients with culture confirmed melioidosis were identified. So they found out that the chronic melioidosis was more common than acute melioidosis, with a duration of presentation of 2 days to 5 years. Diabetes mellitus was the most important risk factor, comprising of 82.3% of the cases. The presentation was mostly splenic abscess and musculoskeletal diseases. Septic arthritis accounted for 19.2% of the cases. Poor outcomes were associated with septicemia and respiratory involvement. Coming to the bone and joint infections in melioidosis, mainly the transmission through hematogenous spread after percutaneous inoculation. It can also come as a direct spread from the soft tissue infection over the bone or joints, present mainly as a septic arthritis or an osteomyelitis. Most affected joint in case of a septic arthritis is knee, followed by ankle, hip, and shoulder joint. Bones involved are femur and tibia. So I would like to go into some slides on management. 2 phases of therapy: intensive phase of therapy and eradication phase of therapy. Intensive phase of therapy is mainly to tide over the initial critical phase of illness. Comprises of mainly ceftazidime, which is an antibiotic of choice for non-severe illness, as an illness not requiring an ICU care or a CNS involvement. In case of an patients requiring ICU care, CNS involvement, going into septic shock, it is considered as a severe illness requiring meropenem or imipenem. So the dosage of meropenem for ICU care is 25 milligram per kilogram, going up to 1 gram IV QIT early. In case CNS infection, it is 50 milligram per kilogram up to 2 gram IV QIT early. The duration is generally 2 weeks, 4 to 8 weeks in special circumstances. As in case of septic arthritis, we go for intensive phase of treatment up to 4 weeks, osteomyelitis 6 weeks, and neuromyelitis 8 weeks duration. Eradication phase of therapy is also absolutely necessary due to high rate of relapse of the infection of melioidosis. Eradication phase of therapy, we use trimethoprim sulfamethoxazole for at least 3 months with folic acid, 6 months in special circumstances, like I said in the intensive phase. Alternative doxycycline can be used, where in cases while using trimethoprim sulfamethoxazole, the patients go into acute kidney injury, bone marrow suppression, development of rash or other features of DRESS syndrome. So the need for source control is absolutely necessary because treatment failures have been reported when there is now adequate source control. Joint and visceral abscesses requires drainage, especially prostatic abscesses. Other internal collection generally resolved with medical therapy, but if there is clinical deterioration with increase in size of the abscess, it might warrant drainage. So one thing to note is that the timing of duration of the intensive phase, and the timing of start of the intensive phase, starts from the date of the most recent drainage or resection where specimen cultures have grown Burkhold area. So in case of a septic arthritis, if we have sent cultures which had grown Burkhold area, that should be taken at the start of the duration of the intensive phase. Regarding the failure of the treatment is generally defined as a failure in clearing of blood cultures within 7 days or a clinical deterioration during therapy. So various things that we need to see if there is a failure of treatment is: one is to evaluate for deep-seated abscess or infection sites requiring drainage. Addition of trimethoprim sulfamethoxazole to the ceftazidime or meropenem during the intensive phase of therapy, because they say there is excellent tissue penetration of this agent in case of neurologic, prostatic, bone and joint, cutaneous and soft tissue infection. Another thing is to switch from ceftazidime to meropenem while there is a failure of treatment. So regarding our patient, the story so far is we started with meropenem initially, which is tailored down to ceftazidime as it was susceptible. We did a serial ultrasound which showed increase in his joint effusion. So he underwent arthrotomy and washout of the right knee joint, and he was also having new fever spikes during this period. So that cultures have also grown Burkhold area. From that day, we have started the duration of the intensive phase. Sugar levels were well controlled. He is currently afebrile and is clinically well, and is planned for a minimum 4-week course of intensive phase and 3 months of eradication phase based on clinical improvement. My learning points were: one was a diabetic patient with disseminated joint infection. Consider melioidosis one of the differential, especially in endemic areas. It could present as a septic arthritis 4% according to the Darwin study. Adequate source control is absolutely necessary for survival and mortality benefits. And optimum duration of intensive and eradication phase is necessary due to higher rate of relapse of this infection. Thank you.
Thank you, Albin, for your presentation. Dawn, would you like to add anything?
Yeah. Thanks, Elvin, for the concise presentation. Just want to say that he was a right host with a chronic diabetes, though it was controlled, but he has not been regular with his medicines recently, so we can't really go by the HbA1c sugars and the what were high. So, chronic diabetic patient who has been going to the field, so the right host, right clinical setting, and with a polyarticular septic arthritis. Our suspicion from the beginning was of a melioidosis, and we had empirically started him on meropenem, and when we're grateful that the cultures, though it took some time, grew Burkhold area. And outside, in fact, he was treated in a good private center in Andhra Pradesh, where they could where they did not speciate it fully, but I had identified Burkhold area and labeled it as probable Cenocepacia. So I think it's important for the lab to be notified that you are clinically considering melioidosis when you have a patient who's a right host for melioidosis, and to be patient because it's a slow growing bacteria. And I think we are also happy that he has improved and is doing well. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Dawn. Would anybody like to add anything or ask Elvin any?
Dr. I'm just coming in. Just a reminder, gentle reminder to our faculties for giving their feedbacks to the